Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I just shrunk the box. Sorry. Wow, this is going great. So I guess I'll preface everything with we might have technical difficulties, and if we do, a full half of them will be the result of my inability or unfamiliarity with this technology. So we're going to dispense of some pleasantries this evening. We're not going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're just going to jump right into it. So, Catherine, would you like to do roll call? We need to unmute all. There we go.
Wellman,
There.
can you hear me?
Yeah, now I am. I'm here.
Okay. Voorhees,
Here.
Cope,
Here.
Godus,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Step,
Here.
Hershey,
Here.
Okay. Like I said, we'll just launch into council comments. Does anybody have a comment for this evening?
With Charlie. I just want to comment on one thing. I saw that Yvette, our finance manager, received the 2018 Certificate of Excellence for Financial Reporting. That's the second year in a row. The FAB, when I joined it back in 2018, was determined to get us there. And with Yvette and her staff's help, we were able to get there. And I think we should, we give her a round of applause, we could do it, but at least a verbal round of applause. We really appreciate the hard work she's done. And I expect with our new financial planning, to do better. So.
Great.
Thank you very much for that, Charlie. Okay, I do see the hands up. Shelley.
I just wanted to say thank you in this difficult time to all of our health care workers that are out there and working very hard to keep us all safe and to keep themselves safe and healthy. And the same with our city staff and everyone in the community that's working on this issue right now. It's a historic time, but we'll all get through it with all sticking together and working hard on this. So kudos and thank you to everyone that's out there working on this issue.
Thanks for that, Shelley. Paula.
Similar to Shelley, I do want to thank everybody, in particular our staff as well. They've been amazing. And Deborah, the connections you're making with everybody on a daily basis really helps a lot. I did want to continue making sure that the community is aware of what's going on, and I really appreciate the PR work that the city's doing, reaching out to do that. And I wanted to also bring up, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more, making sure that we're reaching out to communities that don't necessarily connect with us, like the Latino community, and making sure that they're getting the messaging they need. I shared something with Deborah and asked her to share with all of you of a conversation I had yesterday with Beatrice Soto, and she's working with a leadership group in the Latino community and wants to make sure that that messaging is getting back to different government entities in the city of Glenwood.
All right.
Work towards that for sure, Paula. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Steve.
Yeah, good evening. I just thought I would say, just to kind of put myself in context here, as I may have some statements that seemed a little out of the area. I was supposed to return to Colorado on March the 10th. And as all this spiraled kind of out of control for all of us, I have self-quarantined myself in Texas. And we are under a stay-at-home order here. And so I will continue to be here, and at least until that expires April the 9th.
Wow.
But you may hear me refer to some things that are like, what? Where is he?
All right. Thank you. Any other comments? All right, I'll just give mine real quick. We are having tomorrow a I guess, a interactive press conference, but it's really become, and we hope to make this kind of a regular throughout at least this process, and probably continue on even through the crisis or past the crisis, hopefully. A weekly check-in chat with the community about what things are going well, what things are not going well, any new information we have, whether it be from CDPHE or our local public health, Garfield County Public Health, or actions that we're taking. So last week, for example, we talked at length about the closure of Ride Glenwood and the airport. We also had Dr. Peary on, who discussed what Valley View is doing, the precautions they're taking, and some of that. Tomorrow we'll be meeting, we'll have Deborah and our new Chief Darris. That is, we're going to be talking and trying to interpret for folks. It's interactive, so we'll be on Facebook Live. So if people have questions, please enter them in. We really want this to be a back and forth community conversation. We're not able to do coffee with council anymore for obvious reasons. So we hope this serves somewhat of a niche. And we'll be trying to, as best as we can, interpret the state's guidance and mandates that came out and are ever evolving and getting refined. So that's going to be tomorrow at 11 o'clock if you want to tune in. Next week, we'll also be talking to the library about what services they offer. I believe Shelley is going to be doing that.
Yes.
And then we'll also be discussing, have another meeting, web meeting with Lift Up and Garfield County Public Health. And then if we're able to, we have a regional vice president for the Federal Reserve out of Denver that's going to talk about what actions the Fed is taking that is helping Main Street, and specifically how some of their actions are going to be impacting smaller businesses, and specifically things like in small communities like Glenwood Springs. So please tune in for that if you get an opportunity. Again, we don't want to be talking at people. We want to be talking with people, and your participation is really important, and it helps keep us going. So thank you for that. I guess the next thing we have is our one and only agenda item. This agenda item was originally scheduled to be.
Are we supposed to ask for comments from the public? Or do I remember?
We are, thank you. That wasn't on my agenda, and I don't see the public out there. So Alyssa is our technical person. We have 29 participants, it looks like, from my box here. So our Alyssa is our IT person who's going to help us out with this. So I don't know where we'll see attendees. Okay. So yeah, I see all the attendees on my right-hand screen here. I see some staff. I see some community members.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there's an option to raise your hand. And if not, is there a way, Alyssa or anybody else who's more familiar with this than I am, for them to indicate that they would like to give public comment?
Alyssa is muted. Okay, she's unmuted now.
Yes, there is a raise hand button for anyone who is logged in to the Zoom app, and we will see it the same way that we see the panelists when they raise their hand. And you can allow them to speak the same way.
Okay. So I do not see any hands raised. So assuming that there is no one that wants to give public comment, if there is, and there's technical difficulties and you're not able to raise your hand, I apologize. And please submit your questions to us or give me a call or Deborah a call. But right now, it does not look like we have public comment for items not relating to the one agenda item. So we'll move back to our one agenda item. And where are we at here? It is item 4, resolution 2020-16. This was originally going to be to discuss whether the city of Glenwood Springs wanted to enact a stay-at-home order of some kind and what that would entail. We feel that, I just got a text from a participant that says the meeting is locked.
Is that
Okay.
on YouTube or where?
I just got an email from a participant who's in the meeting who says the meeting is locked, and that's all I know. So I don't know what that means. Sorry, thank you for your patience, both on council and in the public as we work through this, but I just want to make sure that people are able to participate.
I will work on that and I will let you know what I find.
Okay. So I apologize, Mr. Gould, for that. If you can hear me, at least that you're not able to.
They may,
Another person said there's no way of raising their hand, but they don't have a comment specifically. So I tell you what,
Flip it and just go to the item while Alyssa works on that. And
okay,
then public comment on the item and public comment. I mean, we're just flipping the agenda around.
gotcha. How about as a workaround, if we cannot get that, every participant, my number is 379-4248. Again, that's 379-4248. If you want to text me, I will read your comment. Deborah, you're looking very uncomfortable with this? No, okay. I just happened to see you. So yes, anybody who's in the public who wants to text me at that phone number, I will read your comment into the record, and then we can respond if we need to. So Alyssa's going to try to work on it, but in the meantime, we'll just go to the agenda item. This agenda item was really going to be originally about actions the city of Glenwood's contemplating, but because Governor Polis kind of jumped in and did a statewide proclamation, it kind of saved us. We as council still wanted to meet and to connect and find out what's going on with the city's response and what we're doing, and I guess to formally adopt and endorse the governor's action. So with that, I'll turn that over to staff to talk a little bit about.
I guess, did you want us to take you through what we think is in the order? I'm kind of prepared to talk about how I see the order impacting us on a day-to-day basis. I didn't know if you guys wanted to talk about what you had wanted in the order and what was actually in the order, or if you were good with where it landed. I think would be the first thing I would want to know from you guys. Is there anything missing that you feel like you need to address? My advice would be we should not make it more complicated.
Yeah, now that Jonathan let me get unmuted, let me just give a little bit of background that might help orient everybody. The sense we drafted the order that you saw in your packet locally because we did not know whether or not the governor was going to issue an order. The governor has issued 3 different orders, updating one on the evening of the 25th, and actually public health is the critical order that came out, implementing his executive order. There have been 3 iterations of that. So really, it's fairly comprehensive. The areas that really affect us, and I think one I'm going to talk about because I have a feeling that was a comment that Mr. Gould wanted to talk about, was the exception for construction. The state order speaks in terms of critical services and critical businesses, rather than using some of the language you've seen in other states about necessary or things like that. It uses this word critical, defines a lot of those things. For purposes of city operations, critical kind of government functions obviously are all the utilities, anything that we need to do to support what are considered necessary businesses or necessary activities. And those in the order, the intent of the order is really clear. It is trying to limit activity of people to the maximum extent possible. So as I've been asked to interpret this order on behalf of the city, we have tried to keep that intent in mind where there's ambiguity, rather than to interpret it as broadly as possible, which is the nature of oftentimes what I'm asked to do is how do you, what's the loophole, right? We're trying to really keep to the intent for the public health and safety aspect of that. One of those areas is construction, which the order has had 3 different iterations of construction as being exempt from the order. The order currently reads construction, including but not limited to homes or low-income residential housing, and then things that support critical and necessary businesses. For city projects, we had a conference call earlier today. We talked through what that meant. And we, as a staff, came to the conclusion that rather than push the envelope, we should be setting an example and pulling back unless it truly is a critical infrastructure need. So that means things like Two Rivers Park for now, we're taking a pause on. We are delaying the Crestwood project for a week. That notice to proceed, it was going to start a week from Monday or a week from this Friday. It is being delayed until the 13th after the governor's order is lifted. If that order gets extended, we may revisit that because of some timings on getting that project done over time. So we're trying to take as a city, do a good example of what we think the intent of the order is as it relates to city projects. There will be some limited work being done in streets, and I think Deborah can address that, or I guess Matt probably is on the line but can't talk. In areas where it is a single person working, so that we can meet those restrictions, which even if what you're doing is exempted, you have to meet the social distancing requirements. If people are closer than 6 feet, you can't be on the job site doing that. And we have some real concerns about particularly enclosed spaces and that being really physically possible. Also have a lot of concerns about the sort of bigger impact of how do those employees get to work? How do they get from work to the job site? Is it really possible to meet the social distancing? If it is, that is something that may be okay. On a building permit basis, we are focusing on, the order focuses on emergency and critical to support residential. So if your water heater goes out, obviously you're going to get a building permit for that. And we would suggest you probably get started on that and get your building permit, right? Which is what we do today. There again, we're trying to look through, and DOLA is supposed to be providing some guidance on inspection, remote inspections, which we do a little bit of, but it is becoming more of a thing we have to deal with. So that's where the construction industry is particularly complex to deal with. But like I said, at a city level, we are trying to take the approach of abiding by the intent of the order, which is, can we really cut this thing off in 2 weeks and hopefully minimize the long-term impacts, both to the health and the economy, by being aggressive in this 2-week period during the course of the order. Outside of that, you've seen a lot of messaging around the other things that are permitted to do, go to the grocery store, take out, those kinds of things. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions. I just kind of wanted to get, because I know that one area is one that we're getting a lot of questions about, and we're trying our best to work through, and realistically, we're kind of doing it on a case-by-case basis as those requests come in for building permits or inspections, to say, is this something that is critical? And are we comfortable with our employees being in that situation, which is, really our first responsibility. So that's kind of where we're at on that. I don't know what I missed in terms of operations, Deborah.
And I'll take you guys through the impacts we think will happen over the next 2 weeks. Bear in mind, it's been about 24 hours since this order came out, so we're still learning as we go. Am I getting feedback?
Yeah,
Some feedback.
some feedback. It's doable.
Okay.
Can we just take this one at a time? There's just going to be, I think there's going to be a lot of information. So I see some people have hands up specifically for Carl's comments on construction. So Tony.
Hi, Carl. So specifically with construction, can you hear me, Carl?
Yeah, I can. I was just grabbing
Okay, great.
order. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Just with regards to the what the governor has done, I'm not interested in having a hodgepodge in this state of different rules, and we're in a big valley from Eagle County to Garfield County to Pitkin County, from Glenwood to Aspen to Basalt to Carbondale. So hasn't the governor addressed these, and is it necessary for us to do anything since the governor has issued his order that applies to the entire state? Thank you.
Not in an overarching basis, but there has already, as you can imagine, been, like on the municipal attorney's listserv, a lot of discussion about what does all of the language mean. It's like interpreting a new statute.
And
so that's where, and like I would say on construction, with that exception, it started out as just, I think it was just construction, then it said construction including, then it now says construction including but not limited to, and the categories are housing for low income and vulnerable people, skilled trades such as electricians, plumbers, other related firms and professionals for whom provide services necessary to maintain the safety, sanitation, and critical operation of residences, other critical businesses or critical government functions, and other essential services. So, you know, there's a lot of, you could interpret that to mean that all construction is exempt, or you could interpret it to mean only if you're supporting a critical business, a critical government function, or dealing with housing or low income housing. So it's tough, is the reality is we've got to interpret and try to apply this as best we can.
Thank you.
And so I don't have a way to raise my hand, but I'll just, I'll ask a couple questions. One, I've gotten a few comments. One, just for the public, I believe we have the raised hand button fixed. So one of my questions is, Carl, that I'm looking at this order, and I will defer to my legal counsel when it suits me. But in this case, it says exemptions, and it just says construction including but not limited to. That seems that to me that it is all construction is exempted under item number 9 in the update that came out today. So they give 3 bullet points as examples, but the not limited to seems to basically say construction is completely available. And then before that, on item number 2 of this updated public health order, let's see, what is, I think we're looking at the same one, so you'll know what I'm looking at. But item number 2, critical infrastructure including, so construction in general is excluded, but specifically including the following on item 2 is roads and railways, which would be Cedar Crest, public water and wastewater, which that's a component of Cedar Crest, transportation and infrastructure necessary to support critical businesses. I don't know how many residents live up in Cedar Crest that work or need those roads or those services to get to critical businesses. I don't know, but it does seem like it's a very broad exemption for construction. And I guess I would feel more comfortable if the council decided to take action to, because we have the governor's, I believe we have the ability to get more restrictive than the state, a la Pitkin County or San Miguel. But we do not have the ability to get less restrictive. So if we're interpreting it right now to say that we want to get more restrictive, then I think we should take that action. Does that make sense, Carl?
It does. And I guess what I'd like to walk you through is that when we looked at the word critical has meaning, right? So is starting Cedar Crest in a week in the middle of this order critical or not? And I think we can all say probably not starting it that Monday or Friday. It may, because of the schedule going into November, become critical, and Matt has had that discussion internally. But from the standpoint of, you know, the intent of the order, can we take this 2-week period and do a pause? And it's a city project. Is it critical to a government function? No, it's not. We could have a week weather delay as well, right? So from that standpoint, that's one of the reasons we looked at it and said, this is a pause we can take. It's similar to Two Rivers. Yes, you could argue that everything is exempt and it's business as usual, but we also can look at it and go, are we being responsible, and can we take this pause, and is that pause appropriate for the intent of the order? Now, certainly if council wants to change that direction, you have the authority to do that. But that was sort of how we worked through it, trying to figure out, if those lower paragraphs below construction, including but not limited to, had any meaning whatsoever. I will also tell you, I think we'll see at least 2 more versions of this order regarding construction. It's hard for me to say this is a complete answer. The doors are off, go do whatever you want. Recognizing that any of that construction absolutely has to comply with the 6-foot spacing rule, right? So that's part of it as well. So that's where we were on those 2. We have not really, like I said, I think we're taking a look as permits come in on an individual basis. That's the conversation Jen and I had earlier today, as to what's being asked to be done, and whether or not it really seems like, can you do that? I'm sorry, if you're hanging drywall, it's very hard to do that. Some guys are good enough to do it on their own, but it's tough, right? And I think part of it is an education piece, when we have that contact with contractors about what the real rules are, in terms of that social distancing, which is critical. So that was kind of what we were talking through on that. But certainly if council wants to say, you know what, we want to do business as usual, we want no restrictions, issue the notice to proceed, don't act as if there is a public health order that applies to this as tightly because it is fully exempted, you guys are free to do that.
Okay. Just real quick, I think what would make most sense is to continue to ask staff questions and then open this up for public comment, because I do have several hands and several texts from people who want to make public comment on this item specifically. So let's try to stick to format of asking staff questions and then giving council comments after we take public comments. So with that, Rick.
Yeah, just real quick here. This looks like it's going to be a moving target for quite a while. I know the governor's order says April 11th. Come April 11th, I'm not sure what's going to happen on the 12th, or I'm not sure what's going to happen weeks after the 11th. And what we decide here tonight is probably, Carl, something that we would have to come back and revisit the closer that we get to the 11th, or even before, if there are other sorts of orders that are out there. So, I guess my question is, just in talking to the contractors, and we'll probably hear from at least one of them, are they prepared to sort of stand down and then power up? So that would be something I would be interested in hearing. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rick. Charlie had someone else had their hand up. Did they withdraw their hand? Any
Yeah,
other council?
it was me. I took it. I don't have a question, I have a comment, so.
Okay. Any other comments for staff? Questions for staff. All right, seeing none, we will open this up. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Paula,
I forgot
thank
to
you.
raise my hand. I just, are we worried, and I'm with you totally on this, Carl, on understanding that we're trying to take care of people. My only question on Two Rivers, is there any problem there as far as spring runoff or that type of thing? I was not able to attend the meeting recently where you guys had a review of what was happening at Two Rivers, and I'm just curious, are we good on holding off on that? And Deborah, maybe you can tell me.
I believe we're good on holding off for now. They need 2 days to make the site safe, because even though we will leave it closed to the public, there are some things that we know the public will still jump the fence or cut the fence. But that was the main request of the contractor, was just to be able to button up the site.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from council relating to construction or our interpretation? All right, seeing none, I will go to the public. Mr. Gould.
He's muted.
Is he?
Yeah, you got to unmute him.
I did unmute him. So, Mark, if you
do you hear me, John?
I do. Yep. Can we all hear him?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, it doesn't look like I've got a camera, but here's the issue for me is that we're the city is considering taking drastic measures for infrastructure construction, when we as contractors are taking every precaution to be at a 6-foot level. We take temperatures every morning. We ask the questions every morning. We don't let anybody come in the same vehicle. We're doing everything that OSHA's asking of us, everything that the health department is asking of us, and you're shutting us down when we are an economic engine that puts money into your community, and we can do it safely. I'm just flabbergasted that we're talking about, if we can do 6-foot distancing between a backhoe and a bulldozer and a dump truck and a guy in a ditch, why would we be shutting down that economics? And why is that going to save anybody going to Valley View Hospital? Because we know that if you can keep 6-foot distancing all the time, of which we have a protocol site by site how we do this, why would you shut us down for the purpose of just shutting us down? Where is our risk in our infrastructure work? Eagle County, even though it's one of the second highest county, is still letting construction going on. Picken County panicked a week ago. We right now have what, 16 cases in Glenwood's in Garfield County. Why would we cause there to be less employees' income in our city and in our county when it's not going to affect the safety of our county? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Any other hands from the public? Okay, so let me, I did have somebody who texted me who was at the time unable to raise their hand, but asked me to read their statement for public comment. So I'll read this. I'll kind of go through this quickly. It's from DM Newman Construction Company. And it says, all of us are experiencing the event unfolding with regards to the spread of COVID-19 virus. DM Newman Construction Company has been monitoring the spread of the virus in our local areas around our job sites and our main office. We hold the health and safety of our employees, their families, and our community first and foremost. Over the last several weeks, DM Newman Construction has been monitoring and preparing for the needed changes. We have many clients that need for us to meet their schedule, and our intent is to continue to serve our clients and project schedules during this disruption. We have implemented procedures that will allow our construction team to be on site, but much less available face-to-face. This is our effort to control contact and maintain a job site. We do not expect disruption in our availability by email, phone. We have instructed our staff to maximize the use of teleconferencing to attend project meetings in order to reduce this potential for harmful contact for both them and other members of the project team. Some job site safety implementation standards. No carpooling to or from the job site is allowed. A subcontractor entering the job site must check into their superintendent by calling prior to showing up. We will not allow more than 10 workers on any job site of ours. No handshakes or body-to-body contact. No job site meetings in groups, no huddling around plans to work out an issue, and no eating lunch together. Any and all correspondence should be done electronically over the phone or talking through the window of the elevated field trailer. Each employee, subcontractor, individual worker, supplier on the job must keep a minimum distance of 6 feet from another coworker. No two employees are allowed in any field trailer that does not accommodate the minimum distance. Coughing in an elbow, washing hands if possible, use sanitizer. If a worker is sick, report them to a superior and have them sent home. And that was in bold and exclamation mark. It is our goal to establish and maintain safe policies and practices which are in full compliance with all applicable federal, state, local laws, regulations, and guidance, especially those issued by the federal OSHA. Then it goes on to talk about emergency contacts, expectations, maintain main office safety, which is probably not our bailiwick, but I think I was able to summarize DM Newman's public comments. So I apologize if I raced through and missed something. Thank you for those comments. Next is Greg Rigby. Greg, you're gonna have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And by the way, Councilor Willman, don't touch your face.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to do that.
I think you heard from two contractors that are working in the valley right now, and in fact, Glenwood Springs, that are saying they have really incredible processes in place to keep worker safety, to keep the public safe, and for us to just a suspension of logic to say that they can't safely operate is not logical. And so I support the contractors that are working in the city right now and ask that you really do a true risk assessment. It doesn't, I think you're at more risk when you go in and you get your car fueled up and you go in there and you run your credit card. And so it is just an incredible economic driver, as Mr. Gould has stated, that we're trying to keep employees working. We're not wanting to put them on unemployment. We're wanting to keep them safe. We're wanting to keep the public safe. And I would ask you to allow the city of Glenwood to allow contractors to, and I understand Mr. Hanlon's what is essential, but it is clear in the governor's executive order that construction has been exempted or allowed as essential activity. And Glenwood Springs doesn't need to go any different than what the governor's executive order is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rippey. We appreciate that. Is there any other attendee that I'm missing that has a hand up? Okay, thank you very much for that public comment. I am looking at my text and no one else has texted me with public comment for that. So I will turn it back over to council for comments and or a motion. Charlie.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Irby, for reminding me not to touch my face. I have to continue to remind myself that. It's very important. Carl, I guess somewhat of a question for you and a comment. I'm reading paragraph 9 of the Colorado Public Health Department Order 20-24 about construction. And in the context of the overall order, it appears that they're talking about construction, including certain things. They talk about the 3 bullet points there. It doesn't seem, and I'm very empathetic to what Mr. Gould and Mr. Rippey and Mr. Newman have said. And it's true with a lot of businesses, but it seems to me that they're really limiting construction to those 3 things. And can we pass a motion or a resolution saying we're going to allow construction and we're going to interpret that to be broader than the way I read it? That's one question. The second is, you mentioned as you're starting your comments that there are going to be some follow-up type of orders on this. Is this being discussed in the governor's office? Are they talking about maybe changing their definition? And I say that because like today, being a lawyer, I became aware that now as a legal service person providing legal services, I'm now an exempt category. I wasn't in the original order.
Yeah, let me try to answer that, Charlie. I, like you, as an attorney, when I read the exemption, those 3 bullet points to me have to have meaning, or else they wouldn't be there, right? Like literally they wouldn't be there. There would be no reason for them to be there if they didn't have meaning. The rules of statutory interpretation are that, you know, every word has meaning when you're interpreting it. I struggle with that, right? I don't know what the answer is. And I think, and I'll be frank about our profession, I think the reason it was exempted is because we lobbied hard to have our profession exempted, frankly.
I agree.
And the change in the language from construction including, and those 3 bullet points, and then it was changed to construction including but not limited to, I have no idea why that change was made or how it got there. Like I said, ultimately, I think it's your call to interpret the document, not mine. But I would say that if we go back to Mr. Gould's comments about taking the temperature of every employee, if you find somebody who's running a temperature, that employee has been contagious for likely 7 days, right? That it's you are contagious before you are symptomatic. And that is one of the things that has made this so difficult to address. And so, like I said, I am, you guys are the ultimate decider here, but I struggle like you. And I don't know, I think you can adopt an interpretation that just says everything is permitted, because I think that is one reasonable interpretation of that language. I do think that that may change tomorrow or the day after. It may be that those 3 bullet points are eliminated, or it may be that they somehow try to tighten the language. My take on it is it's critical infrastructure and critical housing is what's really identified as the including but not limited to. But that's just my interpretation, and ultimately it's up to you as the governing body to decide.
One quick question, then I'll back up for everyone else. But they did add the language including but not limited to. That was added today.
That was added today. The original order came out and it said construction including, and then it had those same 3 bullet points. And today, I can't remember, around noon, this version came out that said including but not limited to. So and added in the attorneys because it's a good lobby apparently. I don't know.
Well, no, that also has some meaning to me. They're adding that language. So, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Deborah, did you have something?
I can just tell you that, this will not be the only request you will get. I've already been getting requests to, well, can't you just open the tennis courts? Can't you just do this? So you will be, I'm not telling you what you should decide, but I'm telling you the floodgates will open because everyone is suffering and everyone would like their business to be open or just their hobby to be open. And I understand that.
Thanks, Deborah. Rick.
Well, I'm really sympathetic to what Greg and Mark have said. I can understand completely how a pause in what's already on the books is going to be detrimental to them. And, may put Cedar Crest and other types of projects that we want to see done on a different type of schedule. But on the other hand, am worried about the workers coming to job sites. I'm worried that, if we take an action tonight without fully looking at it, that there's some toothpaste that we'll let out of the tube that we'll never get back in the tube. And so, I would say that let's revisit this issue, let's say within a week. I'm not arguing that we should wait until April 11th, but I think that we should see if there's any other guidance that's forthcoming. And, I'd like a little more knowledge on the workers themselves and, how if they've been in carpools, they're going to all of a sudden show up to the job site by themselves. I'm interested in the issue of RAFTA and what happens there. And that's a separate discussion that we can have a little bit later on. So, I'm really sympathetic. I just am sort of torn about 60-40, something like that.
All right, thank you, Rick. Paula.
I am sympathetic to what Mark and Greg and Ken, was that his name, shared with us. I realize this is impacting their businesses and it's going to make a big difference to us all throughout our community, but there are a number of businesses that are also impacted. And I think at this point in time, we have to kind of go back to the reason why this is put into place and the reason why it's aggressive at first. It's to stop things. If we have even one death in this community to COVID, people's empathies and sympathies are going to change towards what this means. I know there are people sick in this community right now. As Carl said, I know people are contagious right now. And we just need to be careful. We want to keep people safe. And I think we should keep that as a priority, at least for this first week, as Rick said, or give this some time. I mean, give us time to put this in place and stop this. It's great that the construction companies are doing what they're doing to keep their employees apart. It doesn't stop an accident from happening, which will impact our healthcare facilities. We are doing everything possible to keep that open and ready in case of a spike. So I think we really have to look at why we're doing this. And really, it's a short term if you look at it. Even if we wait a week out, if we go the 2 weeks that the governor is asking for, we need to do something right now to stop the progression of this virus, and we can do it. And it's going to take sacrifice, and I understand that.
All right, thank you. Tony,
Can you hear me?
I can.
Sorry. You know, I don't know about lawyers, but I know in my job in the district attorney's office, we're certainly essential. And I have been in the real world. And I was talking to Deborah yesterday, and she said, have you been downtown at all? And I'm like, yeah, I worked there. You know, I think even before the governor's order yesterday, people were doing a lot of social distancing. And I can tell you there hasn't been a ton of activity. I am sympathetic with Mark and Greg that, you know, they're using precautions and their businesses need to proceed. We can't just shut down the economy. So I would like to look just to see, you know, what the governor's office has done. They have our best. The Governor Polis has done a fantastic job, I think, and he has put in a series of regulations, and they have the exceptions that they have. I mean, Jonathan, you said something very important. You said that we can't do less. We can't say, okay, fine, every restaurant's going to open in Glenwood Springs, obviously, but we could do more than what the state is doing. I'm just not interested in doing at this point, and what, like Rick said, was very important. This is such a changing situation, and we have another meeting next Thursday. I would rather wait than put in more restrictions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Shelley.
I think most of what I was going to say, Paula had said already, so I won't repeat any of that. But I would like to say I definitely appreciate, you know, it's easy to think that construction outside on a big site like Two Rivers or Cedar Crest, people are separated. But you do have instances when you're going to have to get together and talk about plans and go over details. And we have city staff that would need to be out on the site and doing inspections and interacting with those contractors. And so these rules that are in place, I think are set up to keep everybody safe, keep city employees safe, keep the contractors' employees safe. And I do appreciate all the measures that are being taken by the contractors on that. But I think we're in a historic time. I think we need to respect that. And our main mission now is to slow the spread of the virus and flatten that curve, as they say. So I think if we take a pause for a week, we can revisit this, see if the governor changes the interpretations or adds any other omissions or exemptions for construction. I appreciate the legal opinion, though, from our city attorney, and I think we should respect that now and take this pause and revisit it at our council meeting next week.
If I can, Shelley, too, I want to be really clear that the things that we were talking about are really taking building permits on a case-by-case basis, and to make sure, you know, and educate in that regard. The only two projects we're talking about really doing any kind of a pause are city-run projects.
Right, Cedar Crest and Two Rivers, right? Yeah.
And Cedar Crest, that would be a delay in starting that project by a week, and it would be a pause of 2 weeks on Two Rivers, right? So that's really, I just want to be really clear that the things we were talking about as staff, those are two city projects that we're in control of.
Right.
And you as the owner making a decision, not anything else. And that as we're processing building permits, we're going to be looking at those on an individual basis. So this is really talking about what does the city want to do as it relates to its employees. I will tell you though, on those other permits, we're not going to put our building inspector in harm's way.
Right.
And I will also tell you that the state electric inspector is not coming out to do inspections. So in our jurisdiction, that's a limiting factor as well on a lot of construction.
Right. I had heard that.
You know, and that's something up and down the valley that's having an impact, and was having an impact 2 weeks ago or a week ago when that decision was made that that electrical inspector was not going to come out. So that's why I want to be really clear. We're really talking about two projects. They're both city projects, and your decision on whether or not you want to pause those, one for the equivalent of a week and the other one for 2 weeks.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Shelley. Steve Davis. Steve Davis.
You're muted, Steve.
I muted him. That's
Okay.
my fault. Now you're unmuted, Steve Davis.
So I don't really blame you for that. I deserve that a lot of the time, but you know, I just like to say that every day is certainly a new day, and we all recognize that. I think it makes sense to postpone Cedar Crest for, you know, at least a week or 10 days or so to get us a little further down the road. I think we do have really good contractors in our mix. I think Newman Construction, Gould Construction, I think Greg's company certainly has a plan in place. And as we go forward, actually under the governor's order, there is a form buried in there that's an exception form where you have to actually line out your plan for how you're treating employees and how you're conducting your business. I think that every contractor and every permit that we issue, not just in the next week or so, but probably in the next 30 days, that contractor should have to complete that form and describe their plan for distancing, because I think there's a lot of contractors that will not be able to achieve that and probably aren't even interested in achieving it. It is very important for all of us that we achieve the distancing and slow the spread. So we all have to be very concerned about that. I do have every confidence, like I say, in some of our contractors to achieve that, but not necessarily all of them. And I think whether you're building a home or doing a remodel or building a road or doing a water line project, that you should have to provide the city with a plan before we allow that permitting to happen or that project to continue. That's me. You can mute me again.
Done. Rick.
Well, I would certainly agree with everything that Steve's just said. Even though he's in Texas, I'll agree with him. So I would also just like to ask staff this question, and that is, we have the intentions anyway of letting the South Midland bids go out. And just for the people who are attending this meeting, wondering what the status of that is and how that might potentially be impacted by the things that we're talking about.
I can try to address that a little bit, Rick. I know that we talked through today that what's really going on with South Midland right now is design, so that, you know, they're still finishing up on that. So that is work as long as those professionals can do it in compliance with the stay-at-home order, which means they're working from home or whatnot, that can continue to move forward. I think it's really early, and Deborah can probably speak to this, but it's really early and hard to predict that far in the future, because we're really talking about a project that was slated to start, I think, in the fall now. Is that right, Deborah?
South Midland, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Charlie.
Yeah, it seems to me we have a fairly consensus that we follow the governor's directive and public order, the Department of Public Health Order 20-24. So I would move that we take no action in addition to the current existing state regulations or orders or directives, and that we approve the city delaying the Cedar Crest project in Two Rivers at least till next Thursday at our next city council meeting.
And second the motion.
It's been moved by Charlie, seconded by Shelley. Further comments? All right, I'll just offer a comment real quick because I haven't yet. I think that there seems to be general consensus about where we're at and our concern. I think we are going to have a meeting in 7 days. Deborah, when was Cedar Crest, for example, scheduled to start work?
I believe April 6th.
Okay. So our next scheduled meeting, the first Thursday, is April 2nd. The way this thing is moving, I'm sorry? Okay. The way this thing is moving, 10 days ago, we were in a different world. 5 days ago, we were in a different world. And yesterday, yes, at this time, we were in a different world. So I would expect we will have a lot more information. There will be a lot more testing. There's 7,500 tests that have been given to the state of Colorado, 5,000 immediately, 2,500 are coming in the next several days. So we will probably have a slightly better idea. We'll also have a better idea in 7 days, which again is 4 days before the scheduled start of this project, about what our neighbors are doing and how they're interpreting this. I would say one point of I think we could still take the vote, but Charlie, your motion was for the governor's order, but I think what we're actually taking a vote on is our attorney's interpretation of the governor's order. And I don't think we need to change the order or the motion at all. I think we're all on the same page, and this is pretty easy to do. But I just think a week is going to give us a lot more idea and certainty about what Garfield County, what our neighbors are doing, because I think consistency and regionalism, if we do something and none of our neighbors do, then we're kind of out on an island, and that weighs on my decision a bit. So Terry Parch, did you want to speak?
Hi, Jonathan. Yeah, I was going to comment about the impact to Southbridge and to South Midland, but I think Deborah covered it pretty well. And the only other impacts right at the moment are allowing survey crews to enter the site, and we've had discussion about it internally. So that's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Charlie.
Yeah, I just want to confirm. I think the intent of my motion was exactly what you said. And I also would, just as a general comment to the public, is feel free to email any or all of the city council members on the impacts this is having on you, your work, your employment. We certainly need to know that. It's certainly going to impact on what we can do next week in our next meeting.
All right. Any other comments or questions from council? All right, let's call the question. We're going to do a voice roll call.
Willman,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Davis,
Oh, I muted him.
You muted me again.
I
That's
did.
okay. I'm not offended terribly by that. I said yes. Now you can mute me again.
Cope,
Yes.
Step,
Yes.
and Hershey.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you. I think we've gotten through the construction portion of the governor's order. Deborah, I'm sure there's a lot of other things that apply to Glenwood Springs that you might want to mention, but what are other thoughts?
Just the large ones that we've gotten through so far is that, all of our park amenities except trails will be closed. We're going to ask people not to use playground equipment, basketball courts or tennis courts or anything other than the trails.
Deborah, does
Um,
that apply, excuse me, Deborah, does that apply to just going to parks and walking in and around and taking your dog through parks, or just the physical amenities like basketball courts, pickleball, playground equipment? Can you speak to that
You
a bit?
can walk and jog through parks and trails. Don't use the amenities.
Okay, so parks are not closed.
Parks are not closed except for Two Rivers Park, which is still an active construction site, even if there's no constructing going on.
Okay, thank you.
Parks in downtown will have minimum services to maintain public safety, such as like weekly trash pickup and disinfection of important surfaces. And we'll of course monitor that, but we're assuming downtown trash cans are less full right now.
It's getting together at Sarah Park.
The what? Oh, okay. South Canyon landfill will only be accepting
I think I'm muted.
trash hauler trucks. Acceptance of.
Yeah,
large
we're muted,
recycling
Marilyn.
No, you're not, Steve.
Oh,
and waste will be suspended. Acceptance of cash payments is also suspended until further notice. Payments via established charge accounts, check and credit cards are the only acceptable methods of payment currently at the landfill. Only a minimal amount of pothole filling will occur during this time. We can only have one person doing it in order to maintain 6 feet worth of distance. And that is only because we need to keep streets passable for emergency services.
Deborah, can I ask a question about the landfill quickly?
Yep.
So we are not allowing folks to come in and drop off yard waste and twigs and electronic recycling. Why are we allowing people to come in and drop off any recycling or any household trash?
I will have to pass that over to Matt, who I can see. Yes.
So the interpretation of the governor's order is that they still have to have sanitation within their residence. So if you're storing large piles of recycling and trash, they can't ask you to do that, but we can ask you to hold your brush, which is not a sanitation issue until later. We're kind of following what Pickens County has done, and Eagle and Garfield County is going to go to here soon. These are the same rules that Pickens County implemented this morning. I think it's 7 o'clock. So we're trying to keep everybody consistent, because if we don't implement the same rules, they're all going to drive to us and we're going to be overwhelmed. Indy is already fairly overwhelmed, and the crew there is fairly concerned because they do interact with people on a daily basis. They would like to be as protected as much as possible.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. Thanks, Deborah. Sorry, go ahead. Continue.
Okay, I'm almost done. Minimal street sweeping will occur because each guy can be in the truck by himself, and it's important to keep streets from flooding. We'll do that one, that one. Building inspections will only take place according to like the limited building permits that will be done. And that's all we got right now. I'm sure things will change. It's only been 24 hours, so.
Right.
Charlie.
Just a quick question, that last comment, Deborah. Can people apply for building permits anticipating construction later in the summer? Understand there's no current inspection.
I would think if, obviously they can't come into the building,
Right.
but I think they can still talk to staff and talk through issues.
Well, I thought there was an electronic building permit application.
There is, Charlie, and that's kind of talking about taking it on an individual basis and looking at it. Obviously, there are some categories of building permits that we would need to issue underneath the governor's order, regardless of how we interpret it, because it goes to life, health, safety issues. Your water heater goes out, your furnace goes out, things like that. I see Jen popped up. Mr. Mayor, you may want to.
Yeah, Jen, what do you have to say? Sorry, you're unmuted.
So there is a building permit email. So it's building@cogs.us, and that's how we're accepting all of those. And then our building official will take a look at them.
All right, thank you. Rick.
So with regard to the parks, I understand that they're open. We just don't want people climbing on our equipment, doing, some kinds of face-to-face stuff that's going to break social distancing. Are we planning on maybe putting yellow tape around things, or are we talking about maybe having a sign? And we do have a sign, and we're sure everybody can read it. And I'm just kind of curious how we would keep people from climbing all over stuff.
We've been talking about all those things. The school district did like individual caution tape on all the playground equipment. And we've also talked potentially about like a little bit of fencing around it. Understand that wherever we land, and also signs, wherever we land, people will take that tape down, step over the fence, and maybe even kick down the sign. But we want to make sure people know they're not supposed to.
And so, would that apply to the benches as well?
I don't know if we've even thought about that, Rick.
Okay. I'm just curious, because I can anticipate all kinds of questions I'm going to get. So
Yeah.
looking for
The
shelter.
important message is just stay in your home, only use our parks to hike and walk
So, and run.
and run.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Rick, when you say you're just looking for shelter, don't look for shelter in the parks, because we do not want you congregating in the shelter.
Good point.
And I think that, but the thing I do want to say in all seriousness is that, this is not I don't like living in a community where my neighbor does something and I call code enforcement because I don't like what they did. But these are really extraordinary times. And I think that we want our police force and our code enforcement, and we want our neighbors to protect ourselves and help protect the community. So I really encourage the citizens, if you see folks playing volleyball in a park, if you see people congregating, it's actually not the right time to go up and confront people. And I mean, if you feel comfortable, if you know a couple of the people, go up and see if you can, if that's what you feel comfortable with, but report it. And don't report it so that people get a $5,000 fine and 18 months in jail, because that we're going to not hopefully take a real heavy hand on these things, but we do want to have people get educated. So I don't think it's a bad thing if code enforcement or a police officer comes up to a group who just doesn't understand, who hasn't been exposed to the order, or who really, okay, we get playground equipment, but we're just, playing horseshoes and grilling out. There's not 10 of us. I can see a lot of this happening. So I guess I'm encouraging people to be proactive in the monitoring of our community, because that's what's going to stop any more deaths. And when I say any more deaths, we just had a death in Pitkin County today from COVID-19. So it's not the hypothetical when or if, deaths happen. It is now how many are going to be happening. So anyway, any other reports, Deborah? I have the one thing on the MOC that I can bring up as well, or you can bring it up as well, whatever would you like?
I just there were questions about whether people could still vote. Yes, they can. I mean, Catherine, the idea is to drop it in the box, correct?
Yes, that's correct, in the county mailbox, and we're putting out a press release on that. And I think Matthew Bennett was working on doing a story for the paper as well. We also have a box inside the county building where they have their security, and the ladies there are going to empty those boxes for us. If somebody needs to get a replacement ballot, I'm going to have them make an appointment so I can set up a time and meet with them, or meet them and give them the information they need and give them their ballot. And we're going to get the mail from the post office and keep that here at City Hall too. So I think we're kind of organized on that right now.
Catherine's done a good job of kind of sorting through how to get this process still going. We had not anticipated when we put selling the MOC to RAFTA on the ballot that we would have a stay-at-home order. So thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
All right, and just for the public's information, and it'll be out in the paper as well, but the ballots that you see now, we have a letter of intent to sell, and RAFTA has a letter of intent to purchase at an mutually agreed upon price and contract details for the old MOC building, which is immediately adjacent to the RAFTA building. I think the calls that I've gotten and people I've talked to thought that this had already happened. So they've been confused about why they have to vote on this. And this is a Tabor requirement that when you dispose of public property, that it has to go.
No, Jonathan, not a Tabor requirement, a charter requirement.
Charter, excuse me. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I just didn't want to confuse people even more. So the charter requires that we ask the voters before we sell property that has been used for a public purpose.
Everything that's difficult, I think I just blame on Tabor. So that's where that came from. So thank you, Carl. So yeah, if you get that in the mail, that's what that is about. We would really appreciate as a city that you allow us to utilize those funds that we get from that building for other purposes, and it's completely unusable to us. And so we would all like to do this. We've made that determination. But before you turn your ballot in, make sure you soak it in a vat of bleach for a good half hour to protect all the workers. That's a joke. It doesn't translate as well. I'm sorry.
Can you remind everybody of Election Day? What's the last day they can drop them off?
It's April 14th.
Thank you.
Yes.
Paula, do you have anything else?
No, that was it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Is there anything else? Let's see. I had there is a comment, a citizen comment. I'm going to be kind of a little loosey-goosey on this because of the technology. Are you taking action on the no visitor / close all hotels that was in the ordinance? And it comes from Christian Henney. And he does not have a way to raise his hand or to comment apparently. So
I'm sorry, Jonathan, I missed that as you were reading it. Could you reread it?
yeah, the direct text to me from Christian is, are you taking action on the no visitor / close all hotels that was in the ordinance? And I'm assuming he means the governor's ordinance.
Yeah, I think I think the approach we're going to try to take, I would guess, and we haven't really talked through there again 24 hours in, is going to be education to begin with. And I think that's going to just require some contact with individual operators or phone calls to those individual operators to make sure they understand the order and what it means.
And that order, from my understanding, is that they are allowed, and I didn't see if it changed, but they are allowed to remain open if their residents or guests, excuse me, are part of the essential goods or services that are mentioned in other paragraphs. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. Yeah, but they're essentially providing housing to a critical services.
Mm-hmm. Does it make it?
So as distinguished from somebody just came to visit Glenwood Springs, they're supposed to get in the car, leave, go back to wherever they came, wherever home is for them statewide. That's where people should be going, is to wherever their home is, not, trying to get away from their spouse and going to Glenwood to hang out in the hotel.
Right. And I know when Moab did, and maybe this is again further interpretation, but when Moab did their get out of town and don't come here ordinance about a week ago or so, they made allowances for a lot of their economy. People are van life, living on BLM lands. And so there was a provision in Moab's that specified if you are an employee of an existing business, if you work here, is there any, I know probably not Hotel Colorado, but we do have some more affordable budget hotels where people are actually living, and that is their residence. Does that make any allowances for people?
I believe it does. And I honestly, Jonathan, I don't off the top of my head. I don't have book and verse on this yet. I think generally what was described is that if it is being used for actual housing, if that is their home residence, I think that would be a different issue. Or if it is being used as temporary housing to support critical services, really what they're focused on there is, and the intent I think is, medical profession, firefighters, things like that. We do see a lot of medical professionals who are sheltering away from their families because they know that the likelihood that they are contagious is extremely high.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, we don't have any other agenda items. Is there anything else that staff wants to impart tonight, or any other things that council that came up that we want to do? Have, I guess, closing comments, I guess. All right. Oh, Shelley, thank you.
I had one quick closing comment, and it's just something that I know is available right now. A lot of people in the public may have received their census count. You can go online and fill that out. Since we're in a shelter in place, that's a good activity to do when you're sitting at home. And every voice counts, every person counts in Glenwood Springs, and we really want to have a great census count. So please take this opportunity to get that filled out. Thanks.
All right. All right. Seeing no other hands up from either the public that called in or council, I just want to thank everybody for bearing with us. I think we went relatively technology glitch free. So thanks everybody for your patience as I muddled through this. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.